is here to go on the record. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And
How are you,
what is going on between the United States and Russia and President Putin and President Obama and what's happening on the ground to all those Syrians?
Yeah, first of all, watching just that portion of the interview, it's sad. It really is. I feel sad for the country to have a president who's in complete denial about what's happening in the Middle East. And no one doubts that the Russian economy isn't of the size and scope of the American economy. But what's happening is quite straightforward. Vladimir Putin is going into the Middle East and saying, I know you know that America under Barack Obama is unreliable. You can't count on them. You can count on us. And we're going to show you how firm and resolute we are. We take action. We don't just talk. And within a matter of weeks has positioned not just air assets, but now ground assets in Syria. And other nations are noticing because he's making entreaties as well to the Egyptians and the Saudis and even the Israelis. And what he is saying is that under Barack Obama, America is unreliable, but you can count on Russia. We may not have an economy as big as America's, but we're willing to put, action behind our words. He is directly challenging Barack Obama and as a result undermining America's influence in the Middle East and the broader world. The rest of the world is watching this too.
Well, I think it's probably deeply disturbing to a lot of Americans to find out that a year ago when $500 million was authorized to equip and train opposition rebels in Syria, that 3 days ago that the president scrapped it as being an abject failure when we only had 4 or 5 trained and equipped. And then we hear last night on 60 Minutes, the president says that he'd been skeptical from the get-go about that program. So what in the world are we spending $500 million? Exactly what is our strategy, and how much money, that $500 million, have we spent? And the president thought it was apparently a stupid idea to begin with.
Well, those are all good questions. The truth is that he did it too late. And early on in this conflict, it's important to remember the uprising against Assad was not started by ISIS. It was started by Syrians themselves, including army defectors, people that were leaving the Assad government. That was the time to equip those folks. And I warned, this was 3.5 years ago, I warned that if we didn't do that, these people would be wiped out or they would be run out, and then radical jihadists would fill that open space. Well, that's exactly what happened. By the time he came around to doing anything about Syria, there was not that many people left to work with on the ground. And even the effort to arm and equip them has been slow, unsteady, unreliable. Many of the people that joined our efforts, quite frankly, abandoned it out of frustration. So it's been complicated from the beginning. And when you have a president that didn't believe in it to begin with, well, that tells you one of the reasons why it didn't work.
All right, well, now when the problem is expanded, we have the situation in Turkey with the suicide bombing, 100 people dead over the weekend, 2 suicide bombs. And, I mean, Turkey are our NATO allies. Meanwhile, this was, what about the Kurds who are sitting there in Syria and in Turkey?
Right, and so that's the other country you're worried about. The next nation to be destabilized could be Turkey. Lebanon is already destabilized, could get further in that direction. ISIS is already in Libya. ISIS is already threatening to do something in Jordan, eventually in Saudi Arabia, and they're already growing into their presence in Afghanistan. It is still not too late, although it's harder. It is still not too late to put together a coalition of Sunnis and Kurds working with the Turks, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, and others in the region, not just to counter ISIS, but to bring some sort of balance to all that's going on now, including a safe haven within the borders of Syria, near the border with Turkey, from which an alternative to Assad could organize in safety, a place where refugees could also go, and ultimately a place where there would be an anti-ISIS fighting force on the ground. But albeit it's gotten harder now that there are Russian combat missions being flown in the region.
All right, news that Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian has been convicted in Iran. If you were president, would you swap somebody to get those Americans home, including Pastor Abedini? President Obama swapped for 5 Taliban for Bergdahl, so why not for these Americans?
I agree, and well, let me just say this. I don't agree with the swap, but I agree that it's a heartbreaking situation, and here's why you can't do the other swaps, because it has sent a message to the world. Again, these terrorists saw that we swapped 5 Taliban prisoners for an American deserter. They saw what happened in Cuba. All of these are cases, for example, Alan Gross in Cuba, a heartbreaking case. But when you do that, you are putting in danger the lives of other Americans. Now, foreign nations, adversaries know that if they can get their hands on an American, they can get something in exchange. It creates an incentive for more countries to do that. And let there be no doubt, that's what Iran is doing. There should never have been a deal with Iran for a lot of different reasons, including the long-range missile they tested yesterday, including their nuclear ambitions. But one of the reasons there shouldn't have been a deal is because of Pastor Abedini, because of Jason and others that they are holding illegally as hostages. These guys are playing us at every turn.
And including our U.S. Marine, Amir Hekmati, is also in this.
Correct.
All right.
That's right.
Tomorrow night, the Democratic debate. Will you be watching? And what are you looking for?
I doubt I'll be watching. I've got a busy day ahead of me. I'm sure I'll see the clips and the highlights. I think it's a race to the left. All of them as the candidates. See which one of them can out-liberal the other. Right now, one of the guys that's leading in the polls is Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist. And you've seen Hillary Clinton move far to the radical left in order to appease that radical left base of the Democratic Party. So it's going to be a race to the left, to be more out of touch. In essence, they want to do everything Barack Obama's doing, but even more of it. They want to expand the Obama agenda. So I'm sure that's what they'll argue about tomorrow night, and that's what the whole Democratic primary is about. Who is the most liberal? Who is the most to the left? Who's going to take the Obama agenda that's been disastrous for America and expand it even further? That's what I think you'll hear tonight, tomorrow night.
Without hesitation, President Obama was asked by Steve Kroft if he could run a third term for president if the Constitution allowed it. Would he be elected? He said yes.
Well, I don't think that's true. If you look at now, this election in many ways is going to be a rejection of the Obama agenda. You look at the polls, an overwhelming number of Americans say we're headed in the wrong direction. You don't believe you're headed in the wrong direction if you're happy with the person in the White House. This country is on the verge of being, we are on the verge of being the first generation to leave the next generation worse off, and it's because political leaders in both parties are out of touch in Washington, but none more so than this president, as evidenced by that answer that he gave.
Senator Rubio, nice to see you. Hope you come back soon, sir.
We will. Thank you.